In 1953, the CIA launched a program called Mkultra. Its goal was mind control. Not as a metaphor. Literally, they wanted to find a way to control human behavior through drugs, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and psychological torture. Over the next 20 years, the agency ran at least 149 sub-projects across 80 institutions, universities, hospitals, prisons. Subjects included prisoners, mental patients, and ordinary citizens. Many had no idea they were part of an experiment. The centerpiece was LSD. CIA operatives dosed unsuspecting people and watched what happened. One operative, Frank Olson, was given LSD without his knowledge. 9 days later, he fell from a 13th-floor window in New York. The CIA called it suicide. In 1994, a second autopsy found blunt force trauma to his skull that happened before the fall. The program was officially shut down in 1973. CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all Mkultra files destroyed. He nearly succeeded. But 20,000 pages survived, misfiled in a financial records box. They were discovered during a Freedom of Information Act request in 1977. Those 20,000 pages led to Senate hearings. CIA Director Stansfield Turner admitted to the program. Dozens of victims came forward. The government settled lawsuits. In Canada, psychiatrist Donald Ewan Cameron had used CIA funding to perform what he called psychic driving, erasing patients' memories with electroshock and drug-induced comas, then trying to rebuild their personalities from scratch. This is not a theory. Every claim here comes from declassified CIA documents, congressional testimony, and court records. Mkultra happened. The only question is how much was destroyed before anyone could read it. In 1962, the United States Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest-ranking military officers in the country, signed off on a plan to commit terrorist attacks on American soil and blame them on Cuba. The plan was called Operation Northwoods. The proposals were detailed and specific. Sink a U.S. Navy ship in Guantanamo Bay and blame Cuba. Blow up a U.S. ship in Cuban waters using a drone vessel. Hijack civilian aircraft. Bomb Miami. Attack the U.S. naval base at Guantanamo with friendly Cuban forces dressed as enemies. Develop a fake Cuban terror campaign in Miami and Washington. Every single one of these proposals was written down, signed, and submitted to Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara on March 13, 1962. The document, now fully declassified and available in the National Security Archive, carries the signature of Chairman of the Joint Chiefs Lyman Lemnitzer. President Kennedy rejected it. Lemnitzer was quietly removed as chairman later that year and reassigned to NATO. The document was declassified in 2001 as part of the JFK Assassination Records Review Board. You can read every page online at the National Security Archive at George Washington University. Operation Northwoods was never carried out. But it was approved by every member of the Joint Chiefs. The only person who stopped it was the President. That part is not a theory, it is a matter of public record. On August 4, 1964, President Lyndon Johnson told the American people that North Vietnamese torpedo boats had attacked U.S. destroyers in the Gulf of Tonkin for the second time in 2 days. Congress passed the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution within 3 days, giving Johnson the authority to escalate military operations in Vietnam without a formal declaration of war. The first attack, on August 2, was real. North Vietnamese boats fired on the USS Maddox. But the second attack, the one that triggered the resolution, never happened. The crew of the Maddox reported torpedo sightings on the night of August 4. But within hours, the ship's captain, John Herrick, sent a message saying that the reported contacts were likely caused by weather effects on radar and sonar. He recommended a complete evaluation before any action. Johnson had already drafted his speech. He went on television that night. In 2005, the NSA declassified a study that had been completed internally in 2001. It concluded definitively that there was no second attack. The signal's intelligence had been deliberately mishandled. An NSA analyst had cherry-picked intercepts and mistranslated others to support the narrative of an attack. 58,000 Americans died in Vietnam. Over 2 million Vietnamese. The war that killed them was authorized by Congress based on an attack that the government's own intelligence agency later confirmed did not occur. The documents are public. The NSA published them. This is not disputed by anyone. In 1932, the United States Public Health Service recruited 600 black men from Macon County, Alabama. 399 had syphilis. 201 did not. The men were told they were receiving free treatment for bad blood. They were not told they had syphilis. They were never treated. The study was designed to observe what happened when syphilis went untreated over the course of a human lifetime. The men were given placebos, aspirin, vitamins, spinal taps disguised as treatment. They were monitored as the disease destroyed their bodies. In 1947, penicillin became the standard treatment for syphilis. The researchers did not offer it to the men. They actively prevented them from receiving it. When some subjects tried to get treatment elsewhere, the study administrators intervened. The study ran for 40 years. It was not secret, results were published in medical journals throughout. No one stopped it. Not the Public Health Service. Not the Centers for Disease Control, which took over the study in the 1950s. Not the American Medical Association. In 1972, a Public Health Service whistleblower named Peter Buxton leaked the story to the Associated Press. The backlash was immediate. The study was shut down. Congressional hearings followed. A class action lawsuit was settled for $9 million. By that time, 28 men had died directly from syphilis. 100 had died from related complications. 40 wives had been infected. 19 children were born with congenital syphilis. In 1997, President Bill Clinton issued a formal apology on behalf of the United States government. The last surviving participant died in 2004. In 1975, a Senate committee led by Frank Church investigated the CIA. What they found changed how Americans thought about their own government. Among the revelations was a program called Operation Mockingbird. The CIA had been paying journalists. Not freelancers. Not fringe outlets. Reporters and editors at the Washington Post, the New York Times, CBS, Time Magazine, and Newsweek. The agency recruited over 400 American journalists between the late 1940s and the mid-1970s. Some were full-time CIA employees using journalism as cover. Others were simply paid to plant stories. The program was run by Frank Wisner, head of the CIA's Office of Policy Coordination. Wisner called his network the Mighty Wurlitzer, a reference to a theater organ, because he could play it to produce any tune he wanted in the American press. CIA Director William Colby testified that the agency maintained relationships with some 36 American journalists during the program's peak. Carl Bernstein, the reporter who broke Watergate, later investigated Mockingbird independently. His 1977 article in Rolling Stone named names and publications. He found the number was closer to 400. In 1976, CIA Director George H. W. Bush announced that the agency would no longer recruit working journalists. He did not, however, say it would stop accepting volunteers. The Church Committee's findings are public record. The hearing transcripts run thousands of pages. The CIA's relationship with American media was not speculation, it was policy. For decades, the U.S. government denied that Area 51 existed. It appeared on no maps. It was absent from official records. When pressed, officials would say the location in the Nevada desert was simply part of the Nellis Air Force Range. Nothing to see. In 2013, the CIA declassified a 407-page history of the U-2 spy plane program. For the first time, the document referred to the facility by name, Area 51, and confirmed it as a testing site for classified aircraft. The facility was built in 1955. Its purpose was to develop and test reconnaissance aircraft away from public view. The U-2, which flew at 70,000 feet, was tested there. So was the A-12 Oxcart, the predecessor to the State Route 71 Blackbird, the fastest jet ever built. And later, the F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter. The UFO connection is straightforward. In the 1950s and 1960s, airline pilots were seeing objects at altitudes they thought were impossible, because they were. The U-2 flew twice as high as any commercial aircraft. When pilots reported sightings, the Air Force could not explain what they saw without revealing the program. So they said nothing. Or they blamed weather balloons. The CIA's own declassified report states that over half of all UFO sightings in the late 1950s and 1960s were actually U-2 and Oxcart flights. Area 51 is real. The secrecy was real. The aircraft were extraordinary. But the evidence for extraterrestrial technology at the site remains exactly zero. What the government was hiding was impressive enough, just not from another planet. When Germany fell in 1945, the United States did not simply defeat the Nazi war machine. It hired it. Operation Paperclip was a secret U.S. government program to recruit German scientists, engineers, and technicians, many of whom were active members of the Nazi Party and some of whom had used slave labor in their research. The program ran from 1945 to 1959 and brought over 1,600 Germans to the United States. The most famous was Wernher von Braun. During the war, he designed the V-2 rocket for Nazi Germany, built at the Mittelwerk factory by concentration camp prisoners from Dora. An estimated 20,000 prisoners died producing his rockets. After the war, von Braun was brought to the United States, given a clean record, and eventually became the director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. He designed the Saturn V rocket that took Americans to the moon. President Truman had explicitly ordered that no one with Nazi affiliations be recruited. The Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency simply rewrote the scientists' records. They removed references to Nazi membership, war crimes participation, and SS affiliation. They created new biographies and attached them to the visa applications. Kurt Blome, who experimented with plague vaccines on concentration camp prisoners, was acquitted at Nuremberg and later hired by the U.S. Army Chemical Corps. Hubertus Strughold, who oversaw experiments on Dachau prisoners involving extreme altitude and freezing temperatures, became known as the father of space medicine. The full scope of Operation Paperclip was classified for decades. The records were declassified in 1998. The National Archives has the files. This is one conspiracy theory that the government eventually admitted to, in writing. In 1971, a group of activists broke into an FBI field office in Media, Pennsylvania. They stole over 1,000 classified documents and mailed them to newspapers. What those documents revealed was a program called Cointelpro, the FBI's secret campaign to surveil, infiltrate, discredit, and destroy domestic political organizations. The program had been running since 1956. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover authorized it to target the Communist Party USA. But by the 1960s, Cointelpro had expanded to include the civil rights movement, the Black Panther Party, the American Indian Movement, anti-war groups, feminist organizations, and anyone Hoover considered a threat to the established order. The tactics were extraordinary. The FBI sent Martin Luther King Jr. an anonymous letter suggesting he kill himself, along with recordings from surveillance of his hotel rooms. The letter, now public, reads in part, "There is only one thing left for you to do. You know what it is." The Bureau planted informants inside the Black Panther Party and created internal conflicts that led to violence. They forged letters, spread disinformation, got people fired from their jobs, and coordinated with local police to raid organizers' homes. Fred Hampton, the 21-year-old chairman of the Illinois Black Panthers, was killed in a police raid on December 4, 1969. An FBI informant had provided the floor plan of his apartment. Hampton was shot while sleeping. A federal investigation later determined that police fired between 82 and 99 rounds. The Panthers fired one. Cointelpro was officially terminated in 1971 after the stolen documents were published. The Church Committee investigated it in 1975 and called it a sophisticated vigilante operation. The full archive is available through the FBI's own FOIA reading room. On October 10, 1990, a 15-year-old girl identified only as Nayirah testified before the United States Congressional Human Rights Caucus. Sobbing, she described Iraqi soldiers entering a hospital in Kuwait City, pulling babies from incubators, and leaving them on the cold floor to die. Her testimony was devastating. It was cited by 6 U.S. senators in their speeches supporting military action. President George H.W. Bush repeated the incubator story at least 10 times in the weeks that followed. Amnesty International initially corroborated parts of the account. On January 12, 1991, Congress authorized the use of force in the Gulf War by a margin of just 5 votes in the Senate. 2 years later, journalists discovered that Nayirah was not a random Kuwaiti refugee. She was Nayirah al-Sabah, the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States. Her testimony had been organized by a Washington PR firm called Hill & Knowlton, hired by the Kuwaiti government-funded Citizens for a Free Kuwait. The firm coached her testimony. They arranged the hearing. They placed the story across American media. Subsequent investigations by ABC News, Human Rights Watch, and Amnesty International found no credible evidence that the incubator story was true. Amnesty International retracted its earlier report. The Nayirah testimony is now a textbook case in propaganda studies. A 15-year-old girl, coached by a PR firm, told a fabricated story to Congress, and it helped start a war. The congressional record, the PR contracts, and the subsequent investigations are all public. None of this is disputed. In 1996, journalist Gary Webb published a series of articles in the San Jose Mercury News called Dark Alliance. His claim was explosive, that the CIA had knowingly allowed Nicaraguan Contra rebels to traffic cocaine into the United States during the 1980s, and that this cocaine fueled the crack epidemic in black communities in Los Angeles. Webb was attacked. The Washington Post, the New York Times, and the Los Angeles Times all published investigations disputing his reporting. His editors backed away. He was reassigned, then resigned. In 2004, he was found dead from 2 gunshot wounds to the head. The coroner ruled it suicide. But the story did not end with Webb. In 1998, the CIA's own Inspector General, Frederick Hitz, published 2 volumes investigating the allegations. Volume 2, which received almost no media coverage, confirmed that the CIA had maintained relationships with Contra groups and individuals known to be involved in drug trafficking. The report stated that the CIA had received allegations of Contra drug dealing and, in multiple cases, did not investigate, did not report to law enforcement, or actively intervene to protect its assets. A companion report by Inspector General Michael Bromwich at the Department of Justice found that the Justice Department had been aware of Contra-linked drug trafficking and had declined to prosecute in cases that might expose CIA operations. The CIA did not dispute its Inspector General's findings. The report is available on the CIA's own website. Gary Webb was not entirely right in every detail. But the core of his claim, that the CIA protected drug traffickers because they were useful in the Contra War, was confirmed by the agency's own investigation. The newspapers that destroyed his career have never formally corrected their coverage.